Flying into Bahrain, our plane was largely empty.
You definitely know you're heading into an area of unrest when you are one of the only people on the plane headed to that country.
On the streets, we discovered an eerie silence. Almost no tourists in the hotels. A strict curfew and military checkpoints. No signs of protests, but we were to find out that the unrest here has not ended. It's just been silenced.
We've come across a lot of military checkpoints just driving around here, and you see the guys standing there with their guns, and they're all wearing masks covering their face.
We'd arranged a series of interviews, but most of the sources who had agreed to talk to us disappeared. Family members or others close to them say they had been arrested or gone into hiding after masked machine gun-toting security forces raided their homes and threatened them. The Bahrain Center for Human Rights says more than 460 people have been detained in recent weeks. Nurses who treated wounded protesters, doctors, bloggers, a poet. Nabil Rajab of the Bahrain Center for Human Rights says that there's fear these people are being tortured.
There are people who were hanged for a month and they were electrocuted and sexually harassed and assaulted, and this is the way they are treated inside Bahraini prisons.
We tried to investigate these arrests ourselves, but our second day in Bahrain, helicopters hovered overhead as we stood in the street outside Nabil Rajab's home. Suddenly, half a dozen military and police vehicles surrounded us. About 20 men in black ski masks, some wearing civilian clothing, pointed machine guns at us. They forced us to get on the ground at gunpoint. They erased all the video they found. Then we were taken to a police station and interrogated for nearly 6 hours before being released. Bahrain's foreign minister couldn't tell us why we were arrested.
To scare somebody not to say anything, or to scare someone not to express his views. This is not a government policy.
We asked him about the missing.
There were many who I know personally who've been called in for questioning and arrested, but for a short period of time it was for questioning. But I didn't hear that any one of them being harmed in any way just for blogging or being active online.
From this point on, government minders were attached to our team at all times. They would not allow us to film any of the tanks or military.
No filming?
What's that?
No, there's a tanker down there. Don't.
Oh, no,
There's a
no.
tanker where?
Yeah.
The tank. This doesn't want to
I don't want them to come to you and.
come on, we have. How can we not shoot this stuff?
No.
And our minders told us that there were no protests.
If there's
Can we do the
a
protest,
today, can we
Lieutenant?
film the protest?
What protest? There's no protest. Say to you protest.
Instead, our minders brought us to see the nice things in Bahrain. They brought us to the shopping mall to look at the fine selection of Bahraini shoes. Meanwhile, while we were being minded, human rights workers told us security forces continued to raid homes late at night, taking the opposition away one by one at gunpoint.
As a security, national security.
But we were warned by government officials not to press any further, or we would again be arrested.
Are those guys following us all day?
Oh.
The police?
No, they are not following us.
And this time, we might not get out.
And Amber Lyon joins us now. Great to have you back on Backstory. And you've been getting up to more adventures around the world. The whole Bahrain story, and we've run part of it already, but I'm curious at the stuff that didn't get in, your impressions of the place, the stuff that didn't make it into that story that you can tell us about.
Well, I think what surprised us the most was the amount of, I'd say, targeting that's going on right now in Bahrain against the Shia population. People we spoke with feel like they are being targeted by the military, and they're trying to instill a culture of fear in them, and literally plucking out the opposition one by one, going through these houses, arresting people late at night, masked men, and and taking them away to prisons without giving them any type of explanation as to why they're being detained.
And even taking them out of hospitals. I mean, that's one extraordinary claim, isn't it? They go in, find an injured protester and take them away.
Human rights groups are saying that they are taking them out of the most popular hospitals in Bahrain, and we were able to venture into some of the villages where there's a culture of fear of going to the hospital, and people in this village are treating bullet wounds on their own because they'd rather do that than enter one of these hospitals because they're so scared they're going to get arrested.
And your thoughts, your feelings as you reported this about some of those you were reporting on. I mean, you and I were chatting before this about the doctors and the risks that some of these people are taking.
Yeah, especially for me personally as a journalist, for them to take us out and show us the real story. They were risking their lives. And these doctors are so brave. They leave at night and they go and treat all these patients who are too scared to go to the hospitals. They're treating them in their private hospitals. And they know that any minute the military can bust through the door and take them in and detain them, possibly never to be seen again.
Yeah. But I also want to ask you about the risks involved and the difficulties involved in shooting this story. It's not like popping down the road with a camera crew and knocking off a story for the evening news, is it?
No, it's not. And we had to keep our cameras hidden when we were heading into some of these villages because we knew the government did not want us in there. Very few reporters have shot inside the Shia villages of Bahrain. So we made sure to shoot on small flip cams. We made sure to hide our cameras as we were running into homes. Also to shoot on cameras that have small media discs so that we could conceal them if we were to be detained, which ended up happening.
Yeah, in dramatic fashion. Tell us about that.
Yes, yeah, definitely the first time I've ever had a machine gun pointed in my head, I have to tell you. We were at the home of a prominent Bahrain human rights activist, and all of a sudden we started seeing helicopters swarm above, and I knew something was going on because one of the helicopters just kind of stood still looking down on us, and that's when we decided, well, maybe we should head out. And as we were getting into the van, I remember looking to the right and I saw a civilian vehicle pull up. It was a blue four-door car and two guys got out dressed in civilian clothing. They had no identification. They were carrying huge machine guns and they started screaming at us to get on the ground. First thing I did, of course, journalist instinct, I reached for my flip camera. And then when I realized it was a civilian car and I didn't know if it was the police, I put it down, and then the next thing I grabbed was my CNN ID badge, even before my U.S. passport, because then I thought, you know what, if these guys shoot us, they'll know if I show this to them that the world will know about it, and they may think twice. So. And
you genuinely were worried that this was it?
Yes, for the first 2 minutes, because they made us all get down on the ground. And I was saying CNN, CNN, and there was just no response. The two men in civilian clothing were running around screaming in Arabic. I couldn't understand what they were saying, and they were pointing their guns at us.
And you were detained, you were questioned, eventually let go. What was the reason given for treating international media that way?
No reason at all.
Yeah.
To this day, we still don't have any type of a justification from the government as to why we were detained. I'm going to tell you personally what I think happened. I think they did not want us venturing into these villages and filming what we were filming, and they did not want us talking with this prominent human rights activist. They didn't want us to hear what he had to say.
And you ended up in the local media after all of this, right?
Yes, we did. It was really creepy. The next morning after we were arrested, I went to my hotel room door, opened it up to head to breakfast, and saw a copy of the local newspaper on the ground. When I opened it up, it had this article here that says, CNN reporters arrested. In it, the entire article is BS. The only thing in here that's true is that we were arrested. It says we didn't have identification. We did have identification. It says we were picked up at a checkpoint. We were picked up at the human rights activist's house. It also gives this warning here. It says the journalists were later released after signing an undertaking not to exceed the limits of their mission or violate any rules.
And you signed what?
Nothing. Nothing. And I saw that as kind of a threat.
This is a major, country in the region, a player geopolitically, a real player in the region, and a major US ally. The Fifth Fleet is based there, and yet you get treated like that.
We were about a 15 minutes drive from the Fifth Fleet when we were all put on the ground with guns pointed at our head, and they continued to point their guns at us, about 20 masked men, for the next 30 minutes.
Right.
15-minute drive from the U.S. Fifth Fleet. If that tells you the type of situation that's going on right under the nose of the United States government. I got to tell you something odd, which this whole situation was quite odd, but after we were detained, we were taken out to a five-star dinner by a couple sheikhs who picked us up from the police station and rescued us. And I would like to thank them. They were very kind to us. Yeah. We went from 1 minute thinking we were going to be killed to that night having a five-star dinner. And
bizarre.
Yeah, the whole situation is bizarre.
Yeah. Right, and the demonstrations in Bahrain, when they commenced, there was the protesters were very definite about saying it's a non-sectarian issue. It's about just human rights and how people are treated, or some people are treated in Bahrain. But did you get the sense that it is now becoming a sectarian issue?
It depends. If you talk to one side of the issue, the more extreme side,
right,
they are definitely very sectarian. Some of them are even allegedly being supported by Iran. Mm-hmm. But when you talk to the moderate side, and that's the majority of the protesters, they say that this doesn't have anything to do with being a Shia or Sunni. Yeah. It has to do with human rights. That being said, the more that this issue is ignored, the more we're seeing more and more people look towards the help of countries like Iran, because they're desperate. They're being corralled into their villages, constantly hit with tear gas, bird shot into the villages, and they really, there's a feeling of helplessness going on there right now.
Did they tell you that they feel that it's off the front pages, they've been forgotten, the West is ignoring it?
Well, they didn't say that directly, but you can tell that from their actions, because they're taking very bold actions. The fact that they took a CNN crew, they know this is going to be talked about, like I'm doing right now, and detained us in such a manner, and also the way that they have been shooting into these villages with tear gas and birdshot relentlessly in some of the villages, just shows how bold they are and how much they feel that the world is not watching what's going on in Bahrain. Instead, they're paying attention to Libya and other countries like Syria.
You were saying also about the bizarre nature of being toured around by, after you'd been detained and everything, all of a sudden you've got a government minder and everything in the country was rosy and you're getting tours.
Yes.
Yeah?
I got to explain it to you like this. Yeah. Having a government minder almost makes you feel like you're a child and you've been grounded. Right. As a reporter, because they don't let you do anything. They control what you shoot, who you talk to, where you shoot. And for me as a journalist, it was very frustrating, because I knew I had seen what was going on in the country, yet we were taken to shopping malls to film. We were given people to talk to who they wanted us to talk to, who had one viewpoint. And we were not allowed to tell the real side of the story of what's going on in Bahrain. And unfortunately, the media that's there now is being minded, and the real story is not being told. And that's a story of a people who are suffering right now and living in a culture of fear that masked men are going to storm in their house and arrest them late at night, which has already happened to 460 people in the past 3 weeks.
Yeah. Great to see you, Amber.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure. I love the show.
We'll see you soon.